Join us at the new Gold's Gym Germantown grand opening, presented by Celsius, on August 15th in Germantown Commons. Free food and fitness classes, special offers, live DJ, personal trainers, thousands of dollars in giveaways, and more. That's August 15th at Gold's Gym Germantown.
Local news, national news, even feel-good news, delivering the topics that are relevant to you.
That's why I listen to Joe. He covers it all.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Yeah, honestly, just until about 2 minutes ago, I purchased nothing for Amazon Prime Day, but Laurel egged me on. Laurel told me about this vitamin supplement that she thinks I should take, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll try it. So I went on to Amazon and I ordered it, but it won't get here for a few days, evidently. I'm so glad you're joining us here. It is, what day is it, Thursday already? I have really lost track of the days today. The days this week, I should say. I got to say kudos to the Orlando Police Department, the OPD, releasing the body-worn camera video of the officer-involved shooting on July 3rd in downtown Orlando, the big DTO. This took place at the corner of Jefferson and North Orange Avenue, and it resulted in the death of a suspect named Derek Diaz. Now, I haven't commented on this previously because I hadn't seen the video. And I don't like to, even though, let me give you the thumbnail sketch of this. The officer was said to have seen the suspect reach for the center console when he was told to put his hands on the steering wheel. And when he reached for the center console, the cop shot him. And at first I thought, oh, boy, that doesn't, they didn't find a gun was the problem. There was no gun there for the, for the police to say that he was, in fact, reaching for a gun. But he certainly was reaching for something in the center console. And I reserved judgment on this, and I didn't want to comment on it until they released the body cam video. And I got to tell you, I will be the very first person on radio to cry foul when I think the police have stepped outside the bounds of their expectations. If I think the police have even been slightly abusive or slightly wrong, I will be the first person to call out the police. Laurel, are you reading the comments in the section in the chat room? There seems to be something going on in the chat room. I don't know if you're aware of that. Is there a fight? Are people fighting in the chat room? Do we need to separate people? Do we need to send the police? No? Okay. So I have reserved judgment until I saw the video. And I've watched the video, I think, 3 times total today. And the video is from multiple different angles because there were no fewer than 4 police officers that were there. And we got to see the body cam video from 4 different angles. So we got really good video on this. And I highly encourage you, if you want to participate in this conversation, to watch the video first. Watch the video first. It's easy to do. You can just open up the WDBO app and look for this story. It's going to be like one of the first stories there. And look at the video. Take a couple moments. It's all told, it's less than 3 minutes. I'm going to play the audio here on the air, but the video does it justice. I will try to explain to you what's happening while I'm playing you the audio. So I'm gonna paint a picture for you. The police officers did not pull over this suspect. This suspect was already pulled over. He was in a parking space on Jefferson right by Orange Avenue. So he was already in a parking space. He had loud music coming out of his car, and the police officers were bicycle cops. And bicycle cops in downtown Orlando are on regular patrol. I see them every single day. I'm thrilled to see the bicycle cops every single day. And the bicycle cops saw some activity there at Jefferson and North Orange Avenue where they knew it was a regular place where drug deals happened. And the instinct of these police officers was spot on. They were absolutely right that there was a drug deal going down, that there were drugs in the mix. They were absolutely right. This suspect had drugs on him, so they weren't picking someone that was completely innocent. They identified what they thought was a drug deal, and they engaged the driver. I say driver. Again, the car wasn't moving, but he was sitting in the driver's seat. Okay, so that's the setup. That's the scene. And here's how the body cam video unfolds.
Yo, turn off the car. Turn it off. Yeah, it's in your hand, right there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, in this hand and that hand.
My bad.
Now, give me that. Give me the other one and put your hands on the steering wheel.
So this guy, this driver, again, he's not driving, but the driver is fumbling and bumbling around. He's got a phone in one hand. I think he has a knife in the other hand. I think that's what the officer said. You've got a knife. Put the knife down. And then he's got aluminum foil crunched up in one of his hands. And you can hear the officer giving him commands. The officer is standing at the driver's side window. Meanwhile, there's another officer at the passenger side window. In fact, there's basically two officers on the passenger side and two officers on the driver's side.
Right now. Don't move.
Clear instructions. Don't move.
Put your hands on the steering wheel. Put your hands on the steering wheel.
All right, that was your gunshot. Put your hands on the steering wheel. Put your hands on the steering wheel. The driver, very clearly, with his right hand, was quickly reaching for the center console and opening up the center console. The police officer standing at the driver's side of the door can't see the other side of the dude. Now, the cop on the passenger side could. The cop on the passenger side could see the suspect reaching his hand into the center console and pulling his hand out of the center console. The cop on the passenger side could have seen, I've seen the video slowed down, sped up. I've seen the video 10 ways from Sunday. The cop on the passenger side could have seen that he was not pulling a gun out of the center console. But the police officer on the driver's side could not have seen what he was pulling out of the console because it was blocked by the suspect. It was on the other side of the suspect. So only 1 out of 4 police officers fired a shot, and as near as I can tell, only 1 shot was fired. There's a lot of fumbling around there, and it was hard to identify which of those fumbling around noises was the gunshot, but the suspect was clearly shot, and I will let it continue now.
Are you guys good? Yeah. You guys shoot?
Yeah, I did.
So the guy that just said, "Did you guys shoot?" And another cop says, "Yeah, I did." The guy that says, "Did you guys shoot?" was the cop on the passenger side of the car. The cop on the passenger side of the car wasn't even sure if shots had been fired. So he has to ask the cop on the driver's side of the car, "Did you shoot?" And he says, "Yes, I did shoot." At that point, the cop on the passenger side of the car uses his radio to say shots fired. Okay, that's the end. That's the end of the video from the officer who fired the shot. Now we get the video of the second officer that was on the driver's side of the car.
He's got 9-5.
Yeah, it's in your hand. Give me that. Give me the other one and put your hands on the steering wheel right now. How much?
Same audio, different angle in the video.
Don't move.
Don't move. Clear as day. Don't move.
Word. Put your hands on the steering wheel. Put your hands on the steering wheel.
That's when he gets shot.
You guys good?
Yeah.
You guys shoot?
Yeah, I did.
All right, now here's the third angle. And this is an interesting angle. I think of the videos, this third video is the most interesting one because it is from the perspective of the officer that was on the passenger side of the car. The officer on the passenger side of the car, as he walks up, the window is rolled up on the passenger side of the car. So he motions for the driver to roll his window down. But at the same time, the officer pulls out his baton, fully prepared to smash in the window. Now, at some point after the driver opens the window, the police officer realizes he can put away his baton. But he's already, and I don't know the proper terminology, he's already extended it. You know, you just use centrifugal force and you whip it, and it extends your baton out. Well, he's already extended his baton. So just bizarre timing here. But as some of the stuff in the car starts to go down, the cop on the passenger side of the car leans down to the ground to push his baton into the asphalt to collapse his baton so he can put it back on his belt. So there is a brief moment where his body camera is showing the ground and not the inside of the car.
What up, Red? 95. Hey, stop. Or let the police stop. Hey, stop. Hey, I see it.
Turn it off.
He's got 95.
Yeah, it's in your hand.
So he finally turned the music down.
Right there.
Foxtrot 62 JB, copy 13.
Now, give me that. Give me the other one and put your hands on the steering wheel right now.
We're going to be at Robinson and Orange.
Don't move.
So did you hear that just there, that little sound? That was him collapsing his baton. So that was him bending down to collapse his baton. And when he did so, it took the camera off the suspect, regrettably.
On you.
Put your hands on the steering wheel.
Stop! Are you guys good? Yeah. You guys shoot?
Yeah, I did.
43 shots fired.
Now, this last video is body cam video of the officers immediately trying to resuscitate the suspect. And it's kind of hard to listen to. And the suspect is, I've never given CPR to somebody. I've never witnessed somebody getting CPR, but the suspect is making a lot of noise for somebody who's receiving CPR. And I don't know, doctors, nurses, others who have performed CPR, is this normal? So they pull him out of the car.
Bring it back.
So he's giving him CPR. He's giving him chest compressions.
Stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with me. Stay with me.
See how he's groaning?
Stay with me. Hey, stay with me.
I don't want to hear any more of that. All right, so that is the totality of the shooting. Obviously, there's more investigation still to be conducted. Benjamin Crump, who is one of the absolute best civil rights attorneys in America, has taken up the case. I would be willing to bet, even though that is what I would consider to be a good shooting, I would be willing to bet that the city of Orlando is going to settle with the family via Benjamin Crump. Benjamin Crump will get his 30%, and the family will make off with, $1 million or something like that. That would be my suspicion. After reviewing the video multiple times, I am not an authority on this. This is not my area of expertise, but I have spent the past 30 years of my life telling stories about police shootings, and I'm pretty good at identifying what is a good shooting and what is a bad shooting. And while it is incredibly regrettable that the suspect died, Derek Diaz has absolutely no one to blame but himself for his own death. The instructions were clear. The cops weren't, agitating him. They weren't cussing at him. I didn't have to bleep a single thing from that video. Nothing. There was no rage. There was no anger. There wasn't a racial component. There none of that. None of that. He just shot the guy when he looked like he was reaching for a gun. All right, if you haven't seen the video, check it out right now. It's in this story in the WDBO app, and then join me at 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Do you agree that was a regrettable as it was There was no gun in the car. The officers' lives were not in jeopardy. But there was no way the cops knew that. No way. And I support the OPD on this shooting. 844-580-WDBO or use the open mic in the WDBO app.
When you save on auto insurance for driving safe with USAA Safe Pilot, you'll feel like a big deal, even in a traffic jam. Save up to 30% with USAA Safe Pilot. Restrictions apply.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk.
My name is Joe Kelley. We're talking about the OPD shooting. They released the body-worn camera video of the officers. 4 different angles on that, all of which I just aired a few moments ago. I believe that OPD, and I got to tell you, at this point, I feel sorry for the officer. I feel sorry for the officer. And look, I feel sorry for the victims' families, the suspects' families, the guy who was shot. I feel sorry for his family. But I feel sorry for the police officer having to shoot and kill someone because that weighs heavily on police officers. 844-580-WDBO. Chris is joining us from Deltona. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Hey, man. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
First of all, I do feel for the family just like you do, and the officer especially. And then, I really like that the police department and, like my sheriff, Mike Chitwood, releases these videos because, it does provide a lot of transparency.
Yep.
And it's awesome. It's not cool to see. Nobody likes it. And then the second thing I wanted to say is, I'm in the medical field. I did a lot of ER medicine and all that. And, on occasion, I would have a patient unfortunately pass away right in front of me, and we start CPR. And that is normal.
That is.
Because you're reperfusing the brain. At the same time, you're causing, unfortunately, pain to save their life.
Right.
But, they still experience
Chris,
that.
we have seen so many police shootings in the past where police officers will finally subdue a suspect, they'll shoot a suspect, they'll injure the suspect, and then they won't let paramedics get to the suspect. They will just let him bleed out as a means of punishment, and that's just the worst kind of policing. But these officers didn't even wait for the ambulance to get there before they pulled the guy out of the car and started CPR.
And you got to hand it to them for that, because that just shows integrity.
I agree. I agree. I think it was
protect yourself, and then do the right thing.
Absolutely.
Try to revive the patient.
Great call, Chris. Thank you so much. I certainly do appreciate that. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. We'll get more of your calls and comments coming up next. Make sure you check out that video. It is tough to watch. There's no doubt about it. They do blur out. They blur out where the gunshot wound happened, and they blur out the faces of pretty much everybody in the video. In fact, everybody in the video's faces are blurred out. So you're not going to be seeing blood and gore, and you're not going to be seeing people's faces. But you can check out the video right now in this story in the WDBO app.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. Connected to our community. Talk local issues and events with Joe Kelley. Use the open mic in the WDBO app and let Joe know what interests you. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Put your hands on the steering wheel. Put your hands on the steering wheel.
Body cam video there from the Orlando Police Department after they shot a man dead July 3rd in the early morning hours in downtown Orlando. The body cam video from 4 different officers, 4 different perspectives are all visible now. The OPD releasing that today. Kudos to OPD for being quick and getting that out. And getting it released to the public so that there is transparency within the investigation. These are public servants, and I am pleased to see that they were interested in being transparent with his shooting. When I first heard about it, I thought, they didn't find a gun. That's going to be bad for the cops. If they don't find a gun, that's bad for the cops. Well, they found drugs, and I should point out that you can see it in the video. Between the time in which the suspect was shot, Derek Diaz, after he was shot and before he was dragged out of the car to get CPR, he threw whatever it was that he grabbed in the center console way out the window onto the sidewalk. He deliberately disobeyed the police officer's orders to keep your hands on the steering wheel because this guy wanted to get the drugs out of his car. He risked his life to get drugs out of the car. I mean, that was an absolutely foolish move on behalf of the suspect there.
No surprise that Benjamin Crump is going to take on this case. You know, there does seem to be a certain pattern with this attorney that if the perp versus the cop are of a particular demographic, he's all in it with both feet.
I don't think you understand what a civil rights attorney is. He is... That's exactly what he does. It's not by accident. It's not by bias. He is a civil rights attorney. He is one of the absolute best and most successful civil rights attorneys in America. If you recall, Tyrese, who is the poor kid who fell off the amusement park ride?
Tyrese Sampson.
Tyrese Sampson. Tyrese Sampson was also, and his family was represented by Benjamin Crump. And it was Benjamin Crump and his legal skills and legal prowess that got them a huge settlement from the company. That's the exact same thing you would want for your family. And it doesn't matter if your family's black or white. Crump has a clientele, and his clientele are black and colored people. That's by design. I shouldn't have to explain this. He's a civil rights attorney, and he is doing great work for his clients. And whether or not the family of Derek Diaz earns or deserves some sort of compensation, that is going to be obviously part of the and by the way, most of the cases that Crump gets for his clients are settled out of court. I don't know how much or how frequent Crump litigates, but most of these are settlements. So he is able to negotiate for these families that have no power. They have no wherewithal. I mean, Tyrese Sampson's family had no ability to be able to collect some sort of money out of the owner of that amusement park ride without the help of Benjamin Crump. God bless Benjamin Crump for being there and helping the people that he helps.
Good job, OPD. These police officers aren't human sacrifices. They have to protect themselves. The suspect in the car didn't follow directions, and bad things happen when you don't follow police officers' directions.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Paul Cross is checking our drive here this afternoon, and we had one non-rainy night yesterday, and today we're at least pretty dry across Orange County.
Well, it hit really, really hard about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago in northern Seminole County. It's looking okay right now. We have a lot of surface street crashes, though. That's kind of uncanny. Sand Lake Road eastbound after Turkey Lake Road. We got a wreck there with the right lane blocked. Also one in Seminole County at a very busy intersection. That's Reinhardt Road and Lake Mary Boulevard. This report sponsored by Open House Home Insurance. Getting your home insured in Florida can be a nightmare. With Open House Home Insurance, you can get a free quote online and see the hundreds you could be saving in no time. Start savings today at openhouseinsurance.com. This advertisement does not constitute a binding offer or guarantee of coverage. From the WDBO Triple Team Traffic Center, I'm Paul Cross.
Why on earth are you going through this video, these body cams, step by step and word for word, and putting this man's death on there and analyzing it about what they are and what they aren't doing? Don't you have any compassion for this family to let this be and let it be dealt with in the proper hands as opposed to using it as shock value to get some people to listen?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there in that comment. First, I believe that our audience is mature enough and sophisticated enough to understand that people get shot by police if they misbehave. I know that violence occurs in our communities, and I believe that our audience is mostly adults, mostly smart enough, sophisticated enough to understand why we're having this discussion. Beyond that, I have not spoken disparagingly of the suspect. In fact, I have said on numerous occasions, I feel for his family. If he would have simply followed instructions, he would have been fine. I am terribly sorry for his family. His family is suffering a loss. There's no doubt about that. But to bury my head in the sand and not have a discussion about this defeats the purpose of having a transparent government. I mean, we want to shine light into the darkness. We shine light onto our stories so that we can better understand them. This is not about me trying to get new listeners by airing this audio. It's about being transparent. The police have a role in being transparent so that everybody understands that we can trust them. Because if they don't release body cam video, we'll never know whether or not we can trust the police. And honestly, polling data lately indicates that fewer and fewer people are trusting the police. And it is our job as journalists and as news media to share that information with you. I am doing exactly what I am supposed to be doing. I serve this community. This radio station serves this community. And we serve that community by informing our listeners of what our elected leaders and their law enforcement are doing in our communities. I have no qualms whatsoever about airing this, particularly, given the compassionate tones not only of myself but of our listeners. I am 100% fine with this.
It's difficult to listen to that video.
It is.
However, no justice, no peace? Really? So you're going to burn down Orlando because a man couldn't follow police instructions? There you go. That's the type of society we're dealing with now. Just mob, no matter who's at fault.
Well, I'm sorry, but I have not heard any no justice, no peace chanting. I have not seen any crowds, mobs that are gathering together. I know that when Tyree Sampson died, there were crowds that had gathered together and family members because, honestly, there were more questions than answers at that time. And in this case, now that they've released this video, I mean, we never saw a video of Tyree Sampson, and honestly, I'm glad I didn't see video of Tyree Sampson. But, it would have been interesting to see the video of what the seat looked like and how it wasn't fully closed around him. I mean, I do think there are elements that should have been more closely paid attention to. It's 5:46. My name is Joe Kelley. You're listening to The Joe Kelley Show. You can join me at 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. Or use the open mic in the WDBO app. We'll get more of your calls and comments coming up straight ahead.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. We're moving with you throughout your day. Wake up with Scott Inez and Orlando's morning news starting at 5 a.m. Then settle into work with Brian Kilmeade, 9 to noon. Have a candid lunch with Eric Erickson from noon to 3. Sean Hannity is here for your afternoon pick-me-up, 3 to 5. Get caught up on the news and talk of the day with the Joe Kelley Show, 5 to 7. Moving with you throughout your day. WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Insightful.
You tell the truth from your point of view.
Entertaining.
Man, that guy is a lot taller than he sounds on the radio.
And engaging.
When we hear you on the radio, it's a good thing.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
Orlando Police released the body cam video today of 4 different officers. You get 4 different angles of the downtown shooting death of Derek Diaz on July 3rd at North Orange Avenue and Jefferson Street. I will be the first to criticize police when I think they are heavy-handed or they've gone too far, but I just don't think that's the case here. And I feel for the officer. He's not been identified. The officer who pulled the trigger and shot the guy. It was one shot. I will tell you that even though in the video it's blurred out, it looks like he was shot in the leg, which would make sense because he was seated in the driver's seat of his car, and it likely hit his femoral artery, and that would have caused him to bleed out, I'm afraid.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Hello, it's Mike from Orlando.
Hi, Mike.
I heard the word knife twice. Why have you not mentioned this? You're failing in your reporting. I didn't expect anything more. Thank you.
All right. Laura, would you care to reply to that guy?
We did mention the knife a couple times.
Multiple times.
Yes.
I'm sorry you didn't hear it. I'm sorry you didn't hear us say the word knife, but we said the word knife multiple times. And I said it several times because he does say, at least it's what it sounds like to me. And let's take a listen again. It sounds like he says, put down the knife.
Yo, turn off the car. Turn it off. Yeah, isn't you?
So he just said, he either said, do you have a knife on you or I've got a knife on me?
Your hand right there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, in this hand and that hand.
My bad.
Now, give me that.
So he had a phone in one hand and a knife in the other. He says, give me that.
Give me the other one and put your hands on the steering wheel.
So he took the knife from the suspect. So the suspect no longer has the knife. Okay? So the knife's not part of this anymore.
Right now.
So I'm sorry you didn't hear us mention that, but we most certainly did mention that.
First of all, Joe, that would be a good shoot. There are two people at fault. The suspect for reaching, not following police orders, and the officer on the passenger side kneeling out of sight for a second to collapse his baton, not watching the suspect. Bad call on that officer's, but a good shoot.
You know, that's interesting, and I haven't thought about it that way as to whether or not that officer is going to get a talking to about you shouldn't have taken your eyes off the suspect. That officer didn't fire a shot, for what it's worth, because that officer did have a better view. And I don't know, while the body cam is on the baton as he's collapsing it on the ground, I don't know what his eyes were looking at. I don't know that the officer didn't take his eyes off of the suspect. He might have kept his eyes on him the whole time. I just don't know.
Law enforcement violates people's civil rights a whole lot more than they should, so they have to be held accountable. I back the blue, but we all back the blue until something that the blue does to us that we see for ourselves, that they're not your friends, they're not your buddy. They're there to take you to jail if they can take you to jail.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys are just heartless. This family's mourning, whether the guy broke the law or not, and whether it was justified or not. Do you guys have to keep talking about it? This family is in mourning, and you guys are being sofa quarterbacks and cops and attorneys and everything else and not letting this family grieve in private. And I really hope that a tragedy like this does not ever come near your family.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope nothing like this ever comes near my family again either. And we are not interrupting the family from having their grieving process. We're not standing out in front of their house with a bullhorn telling them, hey, it was a justified shooting. We're not doing that. We're having a discussion on the radio. And if they're tuning in right now and they're offended by this, they can tune out. They don't have to listen to this discussion, but I guarantee you our entire community is discussing this shooting. Everybody is.
This is a direct reply to the woman screaming about respecting the family. The family and the family's attorney had no compunction whatsoever about going on the news and basically accusing those officers of murdering that man. He didn't follow instructions. He was shot reaching for something. You need to get a grip.
Yeah, so the family gave their narrative. Now the OPD is giving their narrative about this. And frankly, the only narrative I care about is the one that's on video, the one you can actually see, not just have to take someone's word for it. I'm Joe Kelley. We'll continue.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Now, WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Triple Team Traffic.
Sand Lake Road eastbound after Turkey Lake Road, a very busy area, and we have a crash there blocking the right lane. Also a crash in Seminole County, Reinhardt Road at Lake Mary Boulevard, and then a multi-vehicle crash, John Young Parkway, northbound at 408. They've got a few lanes blocked there. ProTech Air Conditioning and Plumbing Service. For honesty, integrity, and 100% customer satisfaction, call ProTech 407-291-1644 or visit ProTechAC.com. From the WDBO Triple Team Traffic Center, I'm Paul Cross.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. Breaking news to lively debates, covering the issues that matter to you.
I make it a point to listen to Joe Kelley when I need to fully understand what's happening in the news.
Now, the Joe Kelley Show on Orlando's news and talk, WDBO.
If you're just joining us, we've been talking about the shooting that took place on July 3rd in downtown Orlando as a man, Derek Diaz, shot to death by Orlando police officer as part of an investigation, and the suspect reached for the center console after being told to keep your hands on the steering wheel. The police officer had no idea what he was reaching for in the center console. Could it have been a gun? This was 2 days after they enacted the new, gun laws in Florida where you can carry a gun without a license. And the suspect clearly was reaching for something in the center console. The officer fired one shot and killed him. We've had some complaints about our coverage.
You are so cold-hearted. I hope nothing like this ever happens to anybody in your family, to where somebody does to you what you are doing to this family right now on your...
You know, it's funny. I feel like by you saying that, you're actually saying you do wish something like that to happen to my family. That's my takeaway from that. And as I mentioned in the last hour, if you're just joining us, I mentioned last hour. Look, this is a huge news story when a police officer shoots and kills someone, and especially when the officer says, "I thought he was reaching for a gun," and no gun is found. And the reason why I reserve judgment, I didn't say a word about this on the air, not one word about this until today, until the video came out. Because when I first heard that the suspect was shot and they found no gun in the car, my first thought was, oh gosh, this is going to be a bad shooting. The cops should not have shot this guy because there was no gun. Once I saw the body cam video, I realized, nope. As unfortunate as it is, nobody wants to see anybody getting killed. Nobody wants to see a police officer having to unholster his weapon and fire it. Nobody wants to see a citizen getting shot in his car. As unfortunate as the circumstances were, I think the police officer did the right thing. And to illustrate to the complaint or two we've had about this coverage, and I don't typically do this, but I glanced up at the TV right at 6 o'clock, and I saw that Channel 9, our co-owned, we work for the same company, Channel 9 and WDBO were part of the same company, Cox Media Group. I noticed that they were leading their coverage at 6 o'clock with the shooting, and so I didn't listen to it. So let's hear their take on this and add it to our discussion here.
Ashley spoke with Diaz's family and has their emotional reaction. But we begin right now with Channel 9 Chantel Navarro. Chantel, you watched these videos today and you showed them to law enforcement experts. What did they tell you?
Well, they were saying as unfortunate as the situation is, they found it justified in the way it all played out. Now, the video shows the perspectives from 3 different officers that were coming here from this intersection. This is Orange and Jefferson. They were doing proactive controls here in an area that's known for gun and drug activity. It was a situation that went from a drug investigation to a deadly shooting in less than a minute.
It's in your hand, right there. Yes, sir. Okay, in this hand and that hand.
You're watching body cam video of OPD officer Jose Velez, one of 3 officers who approached Derek Diaz while on bike patrols in downtown Orlando. After first complying with OPD,
put your hands on the steering wheel. Put your hands on the steering wheel.
Diaz moved his hand toward the center console.
All this is reflex. I mean, you're in a situation.
Randy Nelson works at Bethune-Cookman University and trains OPD officers in community engagement. He says what officers did was part of what they're trained to do.
A reasonable person, they would say that what the officer did, a reasonable person would do.
And he's not the only law enforcement expert to think so. Bill Moore is a retired Orlando police detective with more than 20 years of law enforcement experience.
I've been shot at. I've taken guns off of people. It exposes me to you, and that's going to be in the officer's mind. And there's nothing the officers did wrong here. I would have probably shot too.
He says one thing to keep in mind is that permitless carry just came into effect 2 days prior to this deadly shooting.
Everyone's considered to have a gun until proven otherwise.
I did reach back out to Orlando Police today to see if we can get any further information on that body cam video. They said they couldn't comment at this time because it is a pending investigation, but Chief Eric Smith did want to send his condolences to the Diaz family. As for Officer Velez, well, he's on paid administrative leave as is per policy. FDLE is doing its investigation. Live in Orlando, Chantal Navarro, Channel 9, Eyewitness News.
All right, Chantal. And Diaz's family says they were allowed to watch the videos again this morning, shortly before they were made public. They spoke out then this afternoon at a news conference in downtown Orlando. And they say even after seeing the body cam videos, they still have a lot of questions tonight. Channel 9's Felicia Ashley continues our live team coverage. And Felicia, the family says that they were very traumatized this morning, as one might imagine.
Some of the family members were too emotional to even make it here to the courthouse to speak with us. Others struggling to get their words out, but we weren't able to speak with the mother of Diaz's daughter. She told us after watching those videos, she was left with more questions than answers for their daughter. 26-year-old Derek Diaz's family spoke to us hours after watching the videos, and just 2 blocks away from where he was killed.
I threw up in the police station while watching the video.
Next to their attorney, Natalie Jackson.
What we saw on the video left more questions than answers.
They told us they weren't allowed to ask questions and were only allowed to watch the videos once.
We really would like to see and read the police report.
Our daughter, she's still asking questions about her father, and it's really heartbreaking.
The family says it needs to know what warranted police approaching Diaz in the first place, what narcotics they claim were found, and why guns were pulled immediately.
All of this is about police training, and we want to make sure that police are being trained to deal with citizens, especially in the downtown area where a lot of college students are.
When asked how the family moves forward,
I don't know.
Sonia told her daughter for the first time yesterday that her dad was never coming home.
It's still really hard for her to understand those.
Diaz's funeral is this Friday. Channel 9 will be there, and we'll bring you the latest details. Reporting live in Orlando, Felicia Ashley, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
All right, that's Channel 9's coverage of this shooting incident tonight. And it doesn't differ greatly. The police opinions, I was pleased. I was a little nervous. I was like, man, I hope these police experts don't wholly dismantle and disagree with what I have laid out here. But they also argue that it is a good shooting. And I don't mean that as in jovial. It's an exciting shooting. It's just not a bad shooting. Most of us would have shot in a scenario like that as well. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. I know Natalie Jackson, Nat Jax, and I think the world of her. That was the attorney that was there. Ben Crump has been hired, but Natalie Jackson and Ben Crump work together pretty regularly. And one of the things that Natalie Jackson said was, why did the cops have their guns drawn right away? I saw the video and I noticed quite the opposite. The police did not have their guns drawn right away. They had their flashlights out, but they did not have their guns drawn right away. In fact, as I mentioned, the one police officer had pulled out his baton and not his gun. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. Eddie is in Oviedo. You're on the Joe Kelley Show. Hello, Eddie.
Hey, Mr. Kelley, thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
I'll get right to the point, but it was a much better drive home last week when you guys were talking about hot dogs, not to make light of the situation at hand, but I heard on the news clip that you had just played on Channel 9, I hear you keep using the phrase good versus bad shooting.
Yes.
I don't think there's any way to candy coat that. May I humbly suggest that you use the legally preferred justified versus unjustified shooting?
I like that much better.
And then that Ben Crump guy, There was a caller previously who had mentioned he was a whole lot more politically correct than I am. He used the word demograph. I want to see where Ben Crump represents dead white people. I don't have any respect for that man whatsoever. It seems like he completely picks his cases based on whether or not the police were white or not, and whether or not the shooter or the victim, God bless them, if the victims are not white, then he'll take that case and sensationalize it. I don't think he's an excellent civil rights attorney. I believe that all people are entitled to civil rights, and if he was a good civil rights attorney, he should have a more balanced palette of his client list. And that's just the way I feel about that. And thank you very much for taking my call.
Thank you, Eddie. I appreciate you listening. Thanks for your phone call. Let's go to Michelle, who's joining us in Orlando. Hey, Michelle, you're on WDBO.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. I'm just wondering why these kids, I don't know how old this guy didn't look old, do they think they're not going to get shot? I just don't get it. This happens time after time where these mistakes happen, if you want to call it a mistake, or if you a quick justified shooting or not justified, whatever. You keep your hands on the steering wheel where they can see your hands at all times. Why on earth would he do what he did and go digging through something when the guy's screaming at him? I don't get it.
He's 26. He was 26 years old. To answer your question about how old he was 26. And honestly, if he would have just left the drugs in the center console instead of going to reach for them, A, he would have still been alive, and B, he may not have even gone to jail. If the police didn't have a warrant to search his car, or they didn't have probable cause to search his car, he might have driven home that night. But because of his actions, he got shot.
Yes. Yeah, and I just don't get it. Like, after all of these things come to light, this happens time and time again, whether, like I said, justified or not, they have to know that the cops are there ready to pull their guns. And if you don't follow the directions of the police officers, this is what happens, So anyway, it just aggravates me to no end, because I have kids that age, and I can tell you what, if an officer tells you, even my friends that are black, that everyone complains this and that, but one of my friends from Miami, he's like going, listen, I keep my hands on the steering wheel. I make sure that I don't, and I'm very polite to the officers. So there's a certain way that you do these things, and other ways that you react is just get you into so much trouble and, get killed. There you go.
Absolutely. So, Michelle, thank you so much. Hey, thanks for listening and being a part of the show. We really do appreciate that. Look, I think we can all agree that black and brown drivers generally are going to have a harder time with police interactions than white drivers are. I mean, there should be no denying that. And the suspect, Derek Diaz, presumably a brown man, to use that term, but a man of color, if you will, and if he just would have followed the instructions, just followed the directions. I know that. I'm gonna knock on wood here. I've not been pulled over in a incredibly long time, and even the last time I was pulled over, I wasn't cited for anything. So I mean, it has probably been 15, 20 years since I have been pulled over and cited for anything. But I know that when I do see the flashies behind me, and if I've got to pull over, I mean, I open up all the windows. I put all the windows down, put my hands on the steering wheel, and I wait for instructions. And that's it. That's all I do. And I am polite to the officer. The officers have always been polite to me. And again, I know that it's not always the same for black and brown drivers. And I know more black fathers that have to have that discussion with their black sons and daughters and tell them that when the police pull you over, I mean, you've got to behave so 100% on point, legit, legal, ethical. You've got to follow directions because sometimes black and brown drivers are more inclined to get shot than a white driver is. Is that right? No. Is that part of a broken system? Probably. 844-580-WDBO, or hit me up in the open mic in the WDBO app.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and all of Central Florida. Join the conversation now by using the open mic in the WDBO app. Now, the Joe Kelley Show on Orlando's News and Talk, WDBO.
Orlando Police Department releases the body cam video of the officers that were involved in the shooting on July 3rd that killed a 26-year-old man named Derek Diaz. Derek Diaz was instructed quite clearly, keep your hands on the steering wheel, keep your hands where I can see them. And in spite of the instructions, took his right hand and reached for his center console, opened it up, put his hand down into the center console, at which point the officer standing on the driver's side of the car opened fire, shooting one time and killing the suspect. It was all caught on body cam video. And the family has retained a lawyer. They've retained Benjamin Crump. Natalie Jackson spoke for them on their behalf today. And they're demanding more answers. They want more answers about how this happened and how the officers identified that car in the first place. Natalie Jackson said, why were their guns already pulled? In the video I saw, I didn't see guns that were already pulled. They had their flashlights out, and one officer had a baton out.
Joe, had he not been selling drugs, had he just made better choices in life to not sell drugs, and stay at home maybe with his wife and his daughter and made better choices along the way there, he would have still been alive.
Yeah, and when the wife, was talking, or I don't even know if they said it was the wife. I thought they said it was the mother of his child. But yeah, that if he would have been home with his family instead of out selling drugs or buying drugs or whatever it is with drugs, he wouldn't have found himself in that situation.
It's sad about the Diaz shooting in downtown Orlando. It's sad his bad choices made for a horrible situation. But people got to understand also, there is law, there is things you need to go by. But also, until you're out there on the beat, you cannot talk about how an officer does his job unless you've taken training. And just because you shoot at a piece of paper like we did in the military, when you take a life, it freaking sucks. You live with it regardless. God bless everybody involved.
I like everything that you said, except for the part about, unless you've been a cop. Most of us are never going to be cops, but the community still needs to hold law enforcement accountable. And we have every right in the world to second guess and to judge police officers for their actions. Of course, we do it in the court of public opinion. There is the real court that will ultimately make those kinds of decisions.
Joe, maybe this woman should take into consideration a different view. What if Mr. Diaz, who was apparently or supposed to be dealing drugs in Orlando, sold something with fentanyl to her daughter or son, and that child had died? Would she have the same outlook as she is with this crime?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's again another very good a good question, to be sure. My name is Joe Kelley. We got some other stuff I would really like to unpack here tonight, and to be able to talk about a couple of little things here for you. This is a question for Laurel and Paul right now. Do you guys have your cell phones on you at this very moment?
I do.
Okay, can you hold them up to the screen so I can see just the screen of your phones? Just want to see the screens. Neither of your screens are broken, am I right?
Correct.
Mine is.
Oh, yours is cracked?
Oh, it's cracked.
Okay,
Yeah.
hang
Mine's
on.
not.
We're gonna get into people
It's
who.
the protective layer that's cracked, not the actual phone, because I've got the protector on.
Well, then take the protective layer off. Why is my voice
Why?
so
Because then
high?
it would be cracked.
Okay, hang on. So we'll get into that for you coming up next. Y'all, don't nobody go nowhere. We'll continue the Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
This is WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. Talk and discussion on the latest breaking national news.
Crude oil prices continue to fall.
Local news.
You're not going to have Disney have its own government in Central Florida.
And stories that matter to you. Use the open mic in the WDBO app and let your voice be heard on the Joe Kelley Show.
All right, we're going to make a hard pivot here in our talk subjects. We don't usually go on for 90 minutes on a single topic, so tonight was kind of rare. I want to add some lighter fare to the discussion here. And Laurel and Paul, I'm looping you guys back in on this one. So according to a recent study, 69% of Americans are using a partly broken phone. And in most cases, it's the glass that's broken on the phone. But for some others, it's about having a battery problems or overheating issues or whatever, but a partly broken phone. And, Paul, you said that your screen is broken, but not the glass. The protectant screen is broken.
Yeah, I usually I can't really see it on the video chat, but I usually get one of those protectors that go over top just in case, because I have a tendency to bang it around. So it saves the phone glass. I don't have to replace that.
And then, Laurel, you almost always have like a broken glass on your phone, don't you?
Yeah, I was telling the chat I drop it like 3 times a day, so it's actually pretty amazing. Mine's not cracked right now. This is not the common feature. It's usually broken.
Okay, now I'm going to admit to something that I suspect I will later regret. But never, ever, 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 ever in my life have I broken the glass on my phone. Never. Ever. Not on any phone I've ever had.
Let me borrow your phone. I'll change that for you.
Have I ever broken my phone? I will say, if I'm being completely honest, which that's all I can do is be completely honest with our listeners, I will say that one time I did drop it in a toilet.
I did that too in a rest area, a public rest area.
I did it at a restaurant.
Oh my gosh. And can I tell you that before I could even think about it, before I even put my body reacted instinctively to reach into the toilet to grab my phone out. Had I taken just a moment to think about it, I probably would have thought, oh my gosh, I'll go buy a new phone. But instead, I stuck my hand in the toilet and I fetched the phone out. And I will say, again, I'm being completely honest here. I will say it was after the flush. So the water in the toilet, well, it's not 100% clean, right? Mind you, it's never 100% clean, but at least
it's cleaner.
Right. It was at least it was not contaminated with things that are gross and that you don't want your phone to come into contact with. But I pulled my phone straight out, I dried it off, and it worked just fine. Now,
wow.
I sanitized it. I made sure it was as clean as I could possibly get it. But even then, I wasn't able to break my phone. I have never, ever, ever, ever broken a phone.
Joe, have you ever broken your phone
Never,
before?
ever, Paul. I've never broken my phone. I've got to be setting some sort of record, right? That I have
Can
never.
I share something real quick?
Yes.
I used to be a person that would go on field trips, sponsor, whatever you want to call it, for my daughter in her high school.
Sure.
When we get on the bus, a lot of times they were forced to put their phones in a bag, so they weren't allowed to use their phones anyway. I couldn't tell you if there was one clean phone of the whole bunch and all the kids had gotten them, but it was shattered glass.
All of them.
You couldn't even see the screen. I said, what is the purpose of this phone? But they're kids. They'll take what they can get, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Now that we're adults, we have a little crack on there. We feel like it's Armageddon. You know, it's like, oh, my God, I need a new phone.
I wouldn't even know what to do if I had a crack on my phone. I haven't the slightest idea how I would fix something like that. Okay, here's another weird one, okay? And Laurel, this one goes to you in particular because you're a big pet girl, right? You're a big animal girl.
Sure am.
I know you're a big human girl, but you're a pet girl. According to a survey of 2,000 American pet owners, 15% apply sunblock to their pet during the summertime. Another 15% check the temperature of the pavement before going outside to protect their fur baby's paws. Now, I will tell you that checking the pavement temperature is something that I have done with our dog, my stepdog, Arwen, before I take him out for a walk, if I do a daytime walk. Most of my walking with him is at night. But if I do a daytime walk, oh, Terry in the comment thread, just in the chat thread, Terry, damn it, Terry. All right, so Terry just made the very subtle point that while I may have never broken my phone, I always get flat tires. So that is my cross to bear, is getting so many flat tires. I get flat tires all the time. It drives me nuts. You'd think I'm driving through a screw factory or something. So can we go back to the pets? I don't understand where on a pet you would apply sunblock. Where do you put sunblock on a pet?
Yep, as Paul's indicating, you put it on their nosy because their nosy can burn. Also, if they are there's hairless dogs, and if they don't have a lot of hair, you might want to put sunscreen on their skin because they don't have the fur to keep off the sun, and they can get a sunburn.
Now, and I know some people put on little footies, little shoes, if you will, on dogs when they walk them out during the summertime just to keep their feet off of the hot pavement.
Yeah, and that's necessary. Even AstroTurf. I've seen dogs' paws burn on AstroTurf.
Really?
Because it can get so hot. Yeah, so you always want to check that. Yeah, check that flooring before you put your dog on.
We actually rolled down the window of our car one time when we watched a woman pick up her dog from the sidewalk and carry him across the street. We rolled down the window. My wife says, "You are such a good dog, Mom."
Aww.
And the woman was all, "Thank you." And said, "Yeah, it gets hot."
David in the comment thread in the chat room writes, Joe doesn't have enough rage to throw his phone like a baseball against a salt surface. I don't have enough rage to do that. I tried once. This was many years ago. I tried. We used to have something in radio. We used to have these little devices called carts, which is short for cartridges. And carts, this was before computers, and carts would be what every sound was on. Every song, every commercial, every sound effect all came on a cart. For those of you really old people, it looked a little bit like an 8-track tape, the carts did. And I remember one time I got really, really angry. For me, it was, Joe level anger, right? Which is not terribly angry. And I was like, I'm going to throw this cart up against the wall. And then my brain is like, but if you throw the cart, you might break the cart. And then if someone walks through the door, you might hit someone as they walk through the door. So I gently tossed it to the other side of the room. And I felt so stupid. I'm like, oh, I have really got to get my temper. I've got to find a way to trigger my temper a little bit better. All right, hang on. Nope, hang on. I still have to read the instruction manual for this. Okay, a 10-year-old child is recovering after drinking too much water. His mom told doctors he seemed almost like he was on drugs, drunk, even mentally handicapped at that point. The child, the 10-year-old, was playing outside, ended up drinking 6 bottles of water between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. So in 1 hour time, he drank 6 bottles of water. His parents said he started throwing up and acting strange, so they took him to the hospital. Doctors found the sodium levels in his blood to be extremely low. So they replenished his sodium, and he was fine. But doctors remind people to be careful to not drink too much water or to not drink too little water. I'm sorry, that's too difficult for me to figure out where is the middle point in that. Because I'm always told I don't drink enough water.
I heard a doctor say once that the body's a great indicator. If you're thirsty, drink water. That's it. That's all you need. Unless you're doing, crazy exercise or out in the heat. If you're thirsty, drink. The end.
Yeah, that's kind of my rule of thumb as well. 844-580-WDBO. It's 844-580-9326. You can use the open mic in the WDBO app. We'll continue coming up next.
The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO. In-depth segments on topics that matter to Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and all of Central Florida. The Joe Kelley Show on WDBO.
I love your show every night. You're doing great, bud.
All right, we now move into the educational portion of the Joe Kelley Show. You guys ready to learn something? So I was perusing Reddit today under the TIL subreddit. Today I learned, and I was interested. I always look at the TIL because I'm always interested in learning something new. And I learned about shrapnel. You guys know what shrapnel is, right? If I say shrapnel, that's an actual question.
Yes, we know. Oh,
what is making that noise? So how would you describe shrapnel then?
It's bits and pieces of blown apart, usually metal or stuff that's been exploded.
In a bomb or something like that.
Right.
Exactly right. So did you know that how shrapnel got its name? Shrapnel is named for Lieutenant General Henry Shrapnel, who is a British Army officer and whose name has entered the English language as the inventor of the shrapnel shell. In 1784, while a lieutenant in the Royal Artillery, he had perfected, with his own resources, an invention that he called a spherical case ammunition. It was a hollow cannonball filled with lead shot that burst in the air. He intended the device as an anti-personnel weapon. And in 1803, the British Army adopted a similar but elongated explosive shell, which immediately acquired the inventor's name, shrapnel. And it was a fragmentation device which would shoot out shrapnel from everywhere. Until the end of World War I, the shells were still manufactured according to his original principles. But now you know, shrapnel came from a man's name, Lieutenant General Henry Shrapnel of the British Army. I just thought that was interesting. And I will leave you on that note tonight. Thank you so much for being a part of the Joe Kelley Show. Thank you to Laurel and Paul and Ronald and everybody here on this team. We really appreciate you guys. But more importantly, we appreciate our listeners. And we love you guys very much. Thank you for being a part of the show. Thanks for joining us in our chat room on the WDBO Facebook page. We'll see you back here tomorrow night. Coming up next, it's the third hour of the Sean Hannity Show here on WDBO.
Join us at the new Gold's Gym Germantown grand opening, presented by Celsius, on August 15th in Germantown Commons. Free food and fitness classes, special offers, live DJ, personal trainers, thousands of dollars in giveaways, and more. That's August 15th at Gold's Gym Germantown.